We had a scoop this past week here at the 0 Hour. We obtained from a highly confidential source audio of Donald Trump's remarks to a closed-door fundraiser held at his own hotel, the Trump International, here in Washington, D.C. Now, that's a big deal for a number of reasons. Number one, Trump is the first president in modern history who closes his fundraisers to the press and to the public. He does so for reasons that are known only to him, but it makes them all the more newsworthy. Secondly, he is certainly the first president ever to hold a fundraiser in his own privately owned commercial property, thereby enriching himself while raising funds for his campaign. Oh, look, there's so much about Trump that's unique. And thirdly, some of his remarks were rather unique. Now, first, a couple words about the hotel where Trump held this fundraiser at $35,000 a head. He reportedly raised $10 million at this event. So this was, in effect, a gathering of Gilded Age, wealthy people in a Gilded Age setting. In fact, it's not even fair to call it Gilded Age. It's something even a little more ostentatious than that. Now, the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. is just a few steps away from the White House. He leases space for this property from the federal government itself in violation of long-standing regulations. Now, when I say ostentatious, I mean, it has a 5-story atrium. It has a restaurant in the property called BLT Prime. That's basically, I guess, a steak restaurant. It has, quote unquote, the spa by Ivanka Trump TM. There's a trademark sign next to Ivanka Trump's name, which she has trademarked. We could do a whole side disquisition on the trademarking of private names, but we won't do that now. We will get back to Trump's property, which I guess you could say it's like what would happen if an Egyptian pharaoh had tried to monetize his own pyramid without even having the common courtesy to die first. That is the Trump Hotel where this fundraiser was held. Now, as we say, Trump made a number of remarks. Some I found amusing and no one else around here did. Like he, after encouraging a round of applause for his wife, as she sat down, he said, "She's such a nice person." I mean, who calls their wife a nice person? It's always, political spouses are always, he's the love of my life. She's keeps me going. He's the wind between my wings. Trump, she's a nice person. I think that's funny. No one else does. All right, okay, I can live with that. He also said something that was unintentionally funny when he was trying to make political capital out of the Veterans Administration. We do have a clip of that. So, Will, can we play clip 1, please?
When he's got a 9-day wait, why don't they just go out and see a doctor? And our country will pay for the doctor. And it's really the least expensive thing that can happen. Now we have to negotiate some good prices with some good doctors, because I know doctors, but why don't we do this?
Yeah, he says, why don't, and he's speaking in this case about veterans, why don't we have them just go out and see good doctors? Now, of course, we have to negotiate reasonable prices, but let's go out, negotiate reasonable prices with doctors, and then people who, in this case, veterans, can go out and see those good doctors, and the government will pay for it. It's really the least expensive way to do it. Now, Donald Trump doesn't realize this, but he's just described Medicare for all. He's just described single-payer health care. So while he and his fellow Republicans are working to dismantle the imperfect but still at times life-saving system we have in place now, which really should be replaced with Medicare for all, while he's working to tear that down and leave people with nothing, he's really describing as the ideal system Medicare for all. And that is the ideal system. And yes, it would save money. It is definitely the least expensive, given that the most expensive single payer, every other developed country has single payer. The most expensive one is almost half the cost of ours, and it covers everyone. So, okay, that's it. Let's see, what else did Trump, oh, of course, the one thing that this whole Our Secret audio got a lot of coverage for was his remarks about CNN. So let's hear those.
These are really dishonest people. Should I sue them? I mean, Jeff Zucker, I hear he's going to resign at some point when he's done. I mean, these are horrible human beings. And they've created
All right.
But it's a shame what they've done to the name CNN, that I can tell you. But as far as I'm concerned, I love it. If anybody's aware of that, if you think I have to listen to it, it's that for me like you do. Wouldn't that be fun?
Only Donald Trump, instead of saying, is there a doctor in the House, would say, is there a lawyer in the House? Donald, it's $35,000 ahead for your re-election campaign. Of course there's a lawyer in the House, number one. Number two, okay, it got a lot of attention that he bragged that, or said, wouldn't it be fun to sue CNN? Well, you know, I looked into this, actually. I got curious, so I looked into it. There is a legal expert who thinks it's possible for a president to sue a news outlet for slander or libel. Sue us, Donald Trump. Just, I dare you. So it is possible, but it's not clear. It's an unexplored, uncharted territory of the law, but then so much about Donald Trump's presidency is uncharted, number one. Also, though, Donald Trump should know that yet another legal expert believes it's possible to sue the President of the United States for slander or libel. So Donald, don't step into that world unless you're prepared to take as good as you can give. And like a typical bully, I think you can dish it out, but you can't take it. So sue us, Donald Trump. I dare you. That's okay. So that's it. But also, in talking about CNN, he besmirched the name of our friend Van Jones for saying that the Russia story was a nothing burger. But Van was talking about it in a very clear context of, you're probably not going to find something impeachable there. Not that it shouldn't be investigated. He, like all of us, has called for that situation to be investigated, but Democrats should not, as I believe also, Democrats should not be basing their political strategy on Russia. That's what Van meant. So, okay, now he also had some interesting things to say about his fellow Republicans. So let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about some fellow Republicans. And Will, I may stop you at some point for ask you to hit the pause button at one point, but let's hear clip 3.
There is no path to victory without Ohio. I had a little problem in Ohio. The governor was against me, and the Republican Party was against me. Other than that, I did quite well. And not only did we won it by 9 or 10 points. It wasn't even close. I think it was over about 2 minutes after the polls closed. And again, we didn't have the party, and we didn't have the governor. Now we have everybody. Actually, the governor was very nice. He called me the day after the victory. Congratulations. I said, you're a little bit late.
All right, so...
I had help before I even see someplace. But I know Paul's here. Where is Paul? He's here someplace. We're doing another, I like that better. We shipped him over to another fundraiser. And we've actually done very well together. We're working great. Gave me a little hard time during the election. You know, but now we get along great.
All right, so here he's talking about two prominent Republicans, and by when I call them prominent, it doesn't mean that I like them or respect them, but they are prominent. Okay, one of them is John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, and he really goes out of his way. After saying over and over again that people say you can't win without winning in Ohio, he points out that Kasich didn't support him. The Ohio Republican Party was also against him. Kasich, of course, ran against him in the primary, really couldn't stand him, although, believe me, Democrats should not be idealizing John Kasich either. And then he goes on to do everything he can to humiliate Kasich by saying, well, he called me the day afterwards to congratulate me. I said you're a little bit late. Now he turns to Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, somebody who's helped, he's going to need, and by the way, he is going to need to run in Ohio again in 2020 if he runs for re-election, but as he says, he did it without Kasich, so what the heck. But when it comes to Paul Ryan, he's going to need him to pass legislation. He says, first of all, he says, Paul's working another fundraiser, good, that's how I like it. Then he said, well, he gave me a little hard time during the election. Yeah, Paul Ryan, utter hypocrite that he is, said that he was disgusted by Donald Trump's remarks about women, but of course his disgust and outrage didn't prevent him from really going to Donald Trump with bended knee and serving him every chance he could get, because Paul Ryan has no spine, and so Donald Trump just laid in a little more humiliation on Paul Ryan. In any normal political relationship, I would have said that was fatal to their working relationship, but Paul Ryan has already shown such a willingness to crawl and to betray any pretense of having any standards, morals, or ethics that it probably won't hurt him. But it was interesting to see Trump push around and be all alpha male over his fellow Republicans. One last clip I think is of interest here, and that has to do with Donald Trump's remarks about the Middle East. So let's hear clip 4.
We're having a dispute now with Qatar, sometimes referred to as Qatar. We always say Qatar, it's Qatar, they prefer. I prefer that they don't fund terrorists.
Ha, 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 as his Secretary of State is trying to negotiate an extremely tense political standoff between the nation of Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump is busy sabotaging that effort and destabilizing the region by weighing in very heavily on the side of Saudi Arabia, by pretending that Qatar alone is funding terror, when in fact Saudi billions have gone into funding not only the Wahhabist form of fundamentalist Islam that seems to be so deeply connected with the terror movement, but in fact Saudi money has been traced to the origins of some terror groups themselves, including Al-Qaeda. So the notion that Trump would weigh in, blame all of the terror funding, in effect, on Qatar, exonerate Saudi Arabia, and really intercede in this very delicate situation on the behalf of one Middle Eastern country doesn't make sense unless you follow the money. And I would dare say that anything you can find out about Donald Trump's financial ties with Russia, and if there's a story there, it has to do with financial ties, that his financial ties with Saudi Arabia are probably 10 times as deep, 10 times as complex, and 10 times as likely to pose the kind of conflict of interest that leads the President of the United States to mock one Middle Eastern country while pretending the other Middle Eastern country is not a troublemaker of massive proportions. In other words, Donald Trump's Russiagate may really pale in comparison to his Saudi-gate. Journalists, intelligence agencies, start investigating if you're not investigating already. So that is the Donald Trump story. We really felt it was important to bring this recording to light. We felt it was important that the people, first of all, get a glimpse into how the President of the United States operates behind closed doors. And let us not forget one other thing about this recording. While all eyes, or in this case ears, are focused on Donald Trump, he was speaking to a room full of extremely wealthy people who were more than happy to spend $35,000 or more so to spend an evening with Mr. Trump, to fund Mr. Trump's re-election campaign. There is an entire network of extremist billionaires and rich people out there thrilled about what Donald Trump is doing. These people are powerful, they are ruthless, and they, to a large extent, control our democracy. Final thought. My big objection, and I've voiced it on this program in the past, is that too many Democrats structure their rhetoric as if we had a great democracy until Donald Trump came along. Studies at Princeton and elsewhere have shown that in many ways we are already living in an oligarchy. It's not a matter of defending our democracy from Donald Trump alone. It is a matter of defending our democracy from the oligarchs who have already looted it to a large extent and polluted it to a large extent. So while we are fighting Donald Trump, let us fight the entire system of oligarchs who are undermining our democracy. That is the story we will keep bringing to you right here on the Zero Hour. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and we'll be back after this.